miles.
Got it, okay.
So the HOPE credit still counts against you as far as the total number of times you can get the American Opportunity Credit, which is the best one, and that's a maximum of 4 times.
Is this like financial aid, or what is the credit?
It's just, I would say that it's designed to incentivize students to go to college. It's federal money. It's just like if you got a earned income credit for working and taking care of kids. As far as its intent, I really can't go into that per se. I'm more about how do you get it, you know. But I would say that if I was the one writing the bill, I would think that its intent would be to incentivize people to go to college.
Okay.
You know, but it is on the tax return, so it's not necessarily aid. So, what you got?
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay, so you're from H&R Block, right?
Correct.
And I wanted to know, like, if we were to go to H&R Block to do our taxes and stuff, what do we need to bring to the table?
Okay, you need to bring all of your tax information, so that's W-2s, or maybe you got a 1099, most people don't. You know, W-2s, you need the 1098-T form, okay? If you have dependents, you need to know their socials, their date of births, all that kind of stuff. We don't need to see an actual card, you just need to know it, and it all needs to be correct. What else? If you own your home and you pay mortgage interest, you know, you're going to have a mortgage interest statement. It's a 1098-E form. You want to bring stuff like that. Generally, if you're a student, you're going to have W-2s, you're going to have a 1098-T, and you might have some information about some kids. And that's the gist of what you'll be bringing.
Bank accounts?
You will want to have account and routing and account information. If you have the account number, though, I can usually get the routing number because that's public. So I can usually get routing numbers.
You're independent. Okay. I had something, and I'm just trying to think it through. Tax info. How much does it cost?
Okay, that depends on the type of situation you have. A basic return that's only W-2s is $59 for the federal return, and then $59 for the state. Now that is the base retail price. The retail is a lot like taking your car to the dealership. You're going to spend more, and you're going to have the 100,000-mile warranty. Okay, so just want to let you know up front that H&R Block is not going to be the cheapest place. It's going to be the best place to get your return done. Okay, so we do have upfront pricing. So if you have any other documents, bring them into the office, and we will explain to you exactly how much it's going to cost before we even do the work.
Okay. The other thing, if you've owned a vehicle in the past year,
Okay.
how do you put that on your tax returns? Because I know in Missouri it's property.
Okay. Generally, your personal property tax is an itemized deduction. So you have itemized deductions and you have a standard deduction. The standard deduction right now for a single person is worth $12,000. So you would have to have personal property tax, which is what you're talking about, real estate tax, state taxes that you paid in, and then medical bills in excess of like 7.5% of your income. All that stuff added up would have to be more than $12,000 before it's even worth worrying about it.
Okay.
You know, so unless we're talking about large amounts, more than likely you'll be taking the standard deduction, so I wouldn't lose any sleep over it.
Okay, but do we need to bring any information about the properties that we own?
Yeah, it'll be a receipt that says paid, that you paid the property tax. And then on that, and you get it from the courthouse, and on that receipt is going to be the information about the vehicle. But generally, you're not going to be, go ahead and bring that stuff in, but roughly 10% of people are going to be itemizing their deductions this year. So and if you're married, filing jointly, all that stuff has to add up to $24,000 or more before it's worth using. Questions?
We should be possibly speaking of first-time home buyers credit,
Um,
or the home buyers credit, you know, where some people were able to receive that, but they have to pay all that back.
Sure. Are you saying?
No, we should be speaking of that, is what I'm asking. If she just bought a house this year, or.
Well, the first-time home buyers credit, I know that they stopped offering that, I believe, in 2010. So there's not very many people left that are still paying it back. But yeah, that credit has been off the books for a while, but there was a credit for first-time home buyers where you got something like $750 a year or something like that. I'd have to look it up again. And people had to pay it back through their refunds over the course of several years. There's very few people that are left that still have to pay a little bit of that back. So more than likely that'd be kind of an anomalous thing. Any other questions? These are good questions. I like questions. I tell everybody in the office, because they bombard me all day with questions, and I tell them, you know, I'd be worried if people weren't asking me questions, because then that would mean that they didn't know what I was talking about.
So where do we find H&R Block in Joplin?
Okay, we've got a location over on Range Line at Northtown Center. It's right over there across from Harbor Freight Tools, next to the big Baptist church there on 7th Street. Okay, and then we have one over on 7th Street, over kind of 7th and Maiden Lane, in the little plaza over there that Christine was nice enough to be the manager of this year. Okay, and then we have one over on 32nd Street, right by Suzanne's Natural Foods, kind of across the street from Thai Time. There's a Maria's Mexican restaurant in the plaza in there. Okay, and the folks in those offices know how to make your scholarships taxable correctly to get that extra $1,000. Okay, and we have students that come in and they do pay us, you know, retail prices because they know that we know how to get them that amount, and they know that they probably won't be able to get their do-it-yourself software to do it. And I'm just telling you up front. I mean, if you know how to look at the lines on the forms and make sure it's there, that's different. But if you're not seeing $1,000 extra amount on your tax return, then it's probably supposed to be there, and you need to get with somebody to make sure it gets there. Okay, it's worth $200 to me to get an extra 1,000. That's kind of a no-brainer, you know. So, but that's the gist of it. And like I said, we have upfront pricing. Also, in previous years, if you didn't get this credit, okay, and you could be a person that had no wages and you were thinking, well, I don't need to file, I didn't even have any wages, okay? Well, we can talk to you. You can come in the office. If you filed your taxes and you didn't get this credit in the past, we have free second looks where you just bring it in, we look at it, we analyze the situation. You don't have to pay us unless we make changes to it that you agree with, all right? But we'll let you know if it's right or wrong for free, okay? So if you didn't get this credit in previous years, if this is your 4th year going to school, and you didn't have an extra $1,000 in refundable credit sitting on your tax return each year, then that means you need to bundle them all up, or if you did it with us, we can access them online. Bring them in, let us look at them, and let us make sure that you got that credit, okay?
So then this is not the first year that they could have taken that $1,000 and reported it as taxable income?
Yeah, well, it would be $4,000 worth of scholarship. This is an oversimplified explanation, but essentially, you're saying I want to claim $4,000 of my scholarship as taxable, so that I now have $4,000 worth of tuition that was paid for with money I had to pay taxes on. And because you make it money you had to pay taxes on, then you get the credit, which the refundable piece is worth $1,000. So you might have, maybe if you're in the 10% tax bracket and you claim an extra $4,000 as taxable, you spent $400 extra bucks in taxes to get a $1,000 credit. You made, you know, what, $600 there, you know, and that's not including the non-refundable part. So, like I said, it's an oversimplified explanation. What it boils down to is you can't get a credit with tax-free money, so you claim that tax-free money is taxable to get the credit. And the dependent can claim it as taxable on the dependent's return, and then the parent can claim the credit because that kid claimed it as taxable. So, like I said, I can't go crazy with the explanation because there's just a lot of moving parts. But what it boils down to is most students should be getting this credit. Most students are not. And that's why I'm here, is because I'm genuinely concerned that students need to be getting the federal incentive that has been designed for them to get on their tax return to alleviate some of this cost that, you know, we're experiencing here with, you know, paying for school. Okay, and that's what it's designed for, but we gotta make sure that we're doing it.
Now, Ben, do you have a form at H&R that is similar to something they can set at home and it asks them the questions and they can type it in? Or is it just coming to the office?
Best thing to do is to either call us if you have questions, or call 1-800-HR-BLOCK, and then they can get
Okay.
you with an office. Really, explaining this stuff face-to-face is probably better because it's so subjective. You know, I don't know what you have in tuition, I don't know what you have in scholarships, I don't know how much I should claim as taxable, we just want to get the best refund. Question?
It says the first 4 years of college, what does that mean exactly?
That means the first 4 complete years that you are a full-time student, so 2 semesters.
So if you've done like part-time here and then full-time here, it's just, as long as you haven't gone like 4 years, that'd be what, 8 semesters?
Yeah, and
full-time?
4 years essentially means you haven't finished your degree, your 4-year degree.
Okay.
So if you don't have the bachelor's yet and you did pieces of years here, pieces of years there, you can get this credit for all of the full years that you went full-time. That would be the best way to do it. And then for those pieces of years, you should be getting lifetime learning credit. That's worth, I didn't talk about it that much, that's worth 20% of the first $10,000 you spend. But that only reduces tax, it's not refundable. So you would have had to have had actual tax on your tax return before the lifetime learning credit becomes useful. So when it comes to American Opportunity Credit, it's, you know, you're gonna wanna use it for full years, where you were a full-time student. And there'll be a box checked on it that says at least half-time, and it's checked. And, you know, full-time is defined by the school, it depends on whatever the school decides is full-time. It was 12 hours here, I don't know if it still
It
is.
still is,
Yeah,
12
so-
the minimum.
Yeah, so if you're here for 9, you're not full-time, you won't get the credit. Okay, but if you're here for 12, you are, but once again, if you have that piece of a year where you were here for 12 hours, don't waste that credit on it if you could use it for larger values in the future years and get a greater value of the credit. You come out ahead in the long run. So, like I said, it's not the cleanest, easiest thing to do. If you're not understanding how it works, just understand that you should be getting this credit in most cases, and you need to get with somebody to get it, all right? Or otherwise, if you can look at the tax return and understand that the credit is there, great, but that's not something that can be just easily explained with all these new forms. And you're better off, to be honest, if it was me, I'd probably just pay someone to figure it out for me. You know, so that's of course up to you. I'm not gonna tell anybody where to go. That's your discretion. I'm here because I'm genuinely concerned that students are not getting this credit, because I just know they're not. Because this is too complicated for most people to just do. So,
So if they haven't taken that, if in the past they filed their taxes and said, oh, look, I got more in scholarship than what I had, my scholarships were bigger than my bill, so I don't get this. But what you told us today is they could have gotten that $1,000 by reporting it as taxable income.
yes,
Then they could come back to see you and amend their taxes.
correct.
We had a student in your workshop last year, a year before, who
Mhm.
did that, who hadn't taken this credit, and you went to see you guys and
Oh, I know.
amended 3 years worth of taxes for
Yeah.
her, and she walked away with several $1,000s, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I am very aware of that.
yeah,
Didn't want to go crazy on the names, of course.
of course.
So if we go in, because you said it's free to get them amended, or to look at them and all of that to
Yes.
figure out if we can do that.
Okay?
If we were to do that,
Mhm.
do you take the cost out of whatever money we would be getting? Or do we
We
have to pay
can't.
up front?
We can't take the cost out of that return. However, if you haven't filed your 2018 yet, we can attach costs to that. So let's say you have a bunch of years you need to fix and you want to get 2018 filed. Well, we can just tag it all onto 2018's return. And then you can just pull it all out of that and knock it all out. When I have situations where, I've had cases where somebody goes with us and has something complicated where information's supposed to carry from one year to the next, then they go somewhere else and it doesn't carry and it messes everything up. Well, and then we have to do a bunch of amends, so when they come back to us, which happens a lot, we end up fixing all those returns and we just tag it onto the 2018 return and call it good, you know. Then they mail all those amends in, nothing gets spent out of pocket, yeah, their return took a little hit for the cost of getting everything done, but when they're getting those checks coming for credits they should have gotten, they're not really worrying about it too much. So, good questions, actually. And as far as any details for this credit, you go to hnrblock.com, type in American Opportunity Credit, it'll tell you all the qualifications. You can also go to the irs.gov website and look there too. The irs.gov website is very robust. So there's a lot of stuff. Question?
Yes, is it just for the state or is it for any state in America?
It's federal.
Federal?
Yes, so all states.
Okay.
Yes, it'd be on the federal return. There's not tons of benefits per se, I guess, for education on the Missouri return, unless you're putting money into a fund to pay for education later. That's called a, what are those called? It'll come to me later.
Account or?
Well, a health savings account, that's a little different. That'd be an HSA.
But a tax savings account.
Yeah,
Like if you're saving for your children to go to school.
529 plan, that's what it's called.
529, yeah.
Yeah, that's where you put money in for your kids and you get to deduct it off your state tax return. And then when you pull the money out, if you use it for education, you don't have to pay taxes on it when you pull it out.
But
which
do
is
not
nice.
exceed $29,999.99.
Yes. All that good
It
stuff.
would be a gift tax.
29,000?
It would be a
Yes.
gift tax to the kids.
You can only pull so much out.
So once it
At a
hits
time.
30,000.
29,999,999.
Don't pull 30 grand out of your 529 plan, I guess would be the moral of that story. So, but yeah, that's the gist of it.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, well, lots of tax law changes. Ignore the government shutdown because we're filing like nothing happened. There's a lot of clients right now that are, it's like they're almost scared to file. They don't need to be. They need to just gather this stuff up, come on in, and get it done, all right? Missouri did mess up withholdings all the way to September, and then they caught it. I was able to adjust withholdings for my clients at the office I managed last year with the assumption that there would be some kind of hiccup, so I kind of overshot it, and I'm kind of glad I did, because a lot of my clients don't owe, and they would have. But just be aware that Missouri messed some stuff up, so if your return is not looking so great for Missouri, it's probably because they didn't pull enough out of your check. On the federal tax return, same thing's happening. If you didn't adjust your federal withholdings, if you're single with no kids and you would have filed a 1040 EZ, but this year you don't because it doesn't exist anymore, you're probably going to experience the negative swing the most if you did not adjust your withholdings, just so you know. And it's not because you paid more in taxes, it's because you got a bigger paycheck. Okay, so that's what I've seen as far as trends. So if you were a 1040 EZ equivalent this year, that means you may not get as sweet of a deal on your tax return if your withholdings were not adjusted. So just be aware that will more than likely be the case. And we have been working hard in our office to make sure that people's withholdings are adjusted so that does not happen again for 2019. Because it's kind of a big deal. A lot of people's withholdings aren't getting adjusted, which we'll do that for free. You show up in the office, we'll we'll fix your withholdings. We have no problem doing that, okay? And then maybe we'll talk about, these credits and that kind of stuff while we're at it.
Before we started filming, Christina shared this, and I think we could share that out loud, that you started filing people's taxes as early as January 2nd, and someone got a refund already?
My kids, two of my sons filed their tax returns the second week of January, after we opened for the tax season. And they got their refunds this week, today actually.
Yeah.
So if they have their paperwork, go ahead and get filing.
Yes.
Yes, the earlier
Yes.
you get it in, the better. Because just because the IRS or the government is shut down, there are skeleton crews at the IRS that are still working. So it has no immediate impact on you filing, coming into our offices. If they're shut down, we don't work for the government, we're still open. And the earlier you get your return in, the earlier your return can be accepted and processed by the IRS.
Also, there's a law passed a few years back called the PATH Act, where if you get earned income credit, child tax credit, American Opportunity Credit, your return is going to be reviewed by the IRS anyway electronically, so it won't really get accepted until February 15th. So it wouldn't really matter if they were closed or not. If you have those kinds of credits, it doesn't matter anyway. So what H&R Block did to combat that, to deal with that time lag that's getting worse and worse every year because of the scrutiny of these credits, is we have a refund advance where you just get up to $3,000 worth of your advance on the card. Costs nothing, it's a zero interest loan.
Then will you repeat what the path was, what kind of
The PATH Act,
path act, what kind of
Yes.
credits were those?
American Opportunity Credit, Child Tax Credit, and Earned Income Credit. And child credit, tax credit, and earned income credit probably will affect a lot more people than American Opportunity Credit, but American Opportunity Credit will affect a lot more students. So what happens is it's gonna go in a computer system, get analyzed, and that's been, people that have kids that get lots of credits, they probably notice that they're getting their refund later and later, and that's because of the PATH Act. So that's another thing to be aware of. However, we have a refund advance to counter that. People can still get their money in the time frame that they're needing it because they've organized their life situation around it. Okay, so we've got this refund advance to counter that. And since it costs nothing, and like you were saying earlier, most people don't have their, cost of their refund held out anyway, or I'm sorry, the cost of their tax return held out of the refund anyway, then they just apply for the loan because it costs nothing and just get, however many dollars they're approved for. And then they have some cash now, and the balance gets paid off later when the return actually gets processed. And that varies depending on, more than anything right now, whether or not you have those 3 credits. So don't wait, get your stuff, bring it in, get it filed, however you need to. I'll be more than happy to accept new clients. Don't misunderstand me, but the intent of this talk was because I am genuinely concerned, once again, and I know for a fact that students are not taking advantage of these credits, okay? And we have to make sure that they are, because it's free money that's just getting thrown in the breeze, okay? And I hate when that happens. Especially for a student that's living off of loans and scholarships and probably some kind of part-time job, all right? They're gonna need that $1,000, all right? So we're gonna work very hard at H&R Block to make sure they get it. And, I'll be happy to answer any kind of questions anybody in our office will. Any more questions, concerns, complaints, comments?
Well, Ben and
All right.
Christine, thank you so much for coming. We
Yeah.
appreciate this, and this will be viewed by lots of students. I can see some students saying, I didn't know that, and I didn't get my $1,000
Yeah.
last year.
And we had that, I had that last night
And also, yeah,
with a couple who attend school here.
Yes.
And they were like, well, we'll just bring the paperwork in next year, and I told them I would not file their tax return without it, because it would benefit them.
Right.
Their refund went from a low number to where they received an additional $3,000 almost.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yes.
they're going to go back and they're going to get those, get their forms, their 1098Ts, bring in their tax returns, and have me redo them for the past 3 years, or 2 years.
Did you go back?
We can go back 3 years.
yeah.
So would 2018 be included in that 3 years?
It's 3 years prior to the current year's return, so that'd be 17, 16,
2018 is
15.
now, so if you needed to amend this year's, the 2018 one we're doing this year for last year's income and education credits, you can bring them in, we can't amend them. We go back and we'll do 17, we'll do 16 and 15.
You can actually do before 15, but if they owe you, you just don't get it. If you owe them, they have forever to collect it. So if you owe somebody for like 2009, then you still owe them. But if they owe you and you didn't catch it in the last 3 years, you're never gonna get it. That's the official rules, just so you know. So, anyway, all right, well, that's pretty much it.
All
So,
right.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming, both of you. We appreciate it.